Hi, I'm Dawn. If you're one of my subscribers, you may have noticed that I haven't done a video lately, and that's because I've been going through some healing and I wanted to give that my focus during my downtime before I came back and continued with my video journaling because that's really what my videos are, just a continuation of my written journal. And they're really helpful to me to be able to come back and watch them sometimes because I often learn something new or I'm reminded of something. But I don't force my videos. This is just me learning as I go, me sharing as I go. I don't have an intention to do one a week or whatever. I just share this as I'm getting things. But I feel like this is something going on in the collective right now. So hang around to the end to see if it resonates with you. And if it does, let me know. I think a lot of people might be able to relate to what I'm about to share as they go through this similarly with healing, because as you may know, the twin who experiences more spiritual growth carries most of the healing energy, which is shared with a twin who goes through more physical or grounded growth. So, what I share at the end of this is what I took for myself as a message of what's probably happening with my twin flame right now. And again, I just feel like this is something that a lot of the collective can relate to, or really at varying times, because this may be different for you and your twin. Like when we were going through separation, I believe we experienced spiritual growth cycles for a bit, then physical growth cycles. The majority of my growth occurred through the spiritual cycles, where the majority of his growth occurred through the physical cycles. So we experienced things differently and at different times, though they still mirrored each other. Now that we're growing from our heart, it's all occurring together and we're both experiencing it simultaneously. And I don't know this as a direct confirmation from my twin, but like most of what I go through, it's what I've been given through my higher self. We all have our own unique divine energy, which is our soul's expression through unconditional love, but it goes beyond divine feminine and masculine characteristics as we often describe qualities of our soul. It's our divinity. We tend to label those traits as being either feminine or masculine in nature, which can be seen throughout our perceived universe. And we tend to live life more through divine femininity or divine masculinity when we're in our divine energy. So there are numerous conditions placed upon us, especially in our childhood when we're most impressionable. And these conditions can often cause us to vibrate in frequencies that are not aligned to our true design. We begin living through wounded energy, often believing we're standing up for ourselves when we're fighting to grab hold of our place and fall in line with much of society. So, for right at a little over a year, I believe my other experiencer has been going through what I call bridging and balancing. This is what is commonly referred to as the separation stage for twin flames, which is a separation of proximity, often with a good bit of distance. As part of our relearning, we're meant to recognize and acknowledge things that we experience through that separation, which actually shows us that we're not separated or, even physically, which is why I started calling it bridging and balancing. This is our higher self helping us realize that our spirit and body have been in a divide. We're being guided to bridging that gap and grow with awareness, knowledge, and discernment through our unique balance. And after we grow into this, I believe we move into our heart space simultaneously and continue growing from there. So, over the last few months, I've noticed I'm experiencing deeper cycles of healing as I'm growing from my heart. And I first went through feeling hopelessness, which it seemed to come out of nowhere. And I'd felt that same hopelessness a few times during bridging, which very strongly felt like it came from my twin because I started hearing him tell me telepathically, I want to be with you, but I just can't be. And I could so very clearly, it was so strong, I could feel his hopelessness each time. But I began treating those moments as though he were telling me face to face and reacted as I believe I would have, which was through understanding and compassion. I simply expressed through my heart that I loved him, but I would never want him to change his situation unless he decided it was what was best. I didn't always feel that way though. In the early stages of learning about my own balance, I wished every single day he would show up for me to choose me. And at the time, I didn't know that he had been in a long-term relationship, but I did suspect he was in a committed relationship. So as I began growing spiritually, that desire still remained, but it changed from selfishness to love. I no longer wanted him for my own desires. I only felt love for him and wanted to be able to share in that love too. Like I wanted him to be able to share in that love, to feel that. And, I didn't want him to want me through his own selfish desires, but only to love. And I knew that this was my authenticity coming through. So the hopeless feeling, though it would come from me as well because we mirror, came from him, and I would transmute that vibration through love, even though I didn't realize that that's what I was doing then, as I was just following my guidance and I was learning. So this time, now being aware of that transmutation, the hopelessness stuck around a little longer and it really dug in deep. And it was just weighing heavily on me for a couple of weeks. And it was off and on a few days at a time. Like I could feel it really strongly for a few days, then it would kind of fade away, but it was still there a little bit. And then it would come back again really strong for a few days. So it's like how we go through our growth cycles where we will feel intense growth and then we'll have a period of rest. So it's kind of like that. Then I experienced a big release where I basically broke down and I cried and talked out loud with my higher self, and then the hopelessness just went away. And it was like clockwork, though. A few days later, I felt an overwhelming emptiness inside. And I'm not sure how hopelessness and emptiness are different, but I think they're probably stages of similar fear-based energies. And again, it just came out of nowhere, and I felt strongly that this was linked to my twin and something he must be going through. And without realizing it, I ended up going through the same thing where I just kept wondering, why am I feeling this way? And I did some more crying and some more talking, talking things through with myself, with my higher self, just sitting in my emotions. And I had another release, and then I seemed to, feel back to normal again, but actually better, even better than before. It was about this time I had a song come to me one morning when I awoke, which is when we supposedly have easier access to our subconscious. And it just immediately popped into my head, even though I hadn't heard the song in a long time, and nor was it even a song that I ever really liked very much. But after a couple of days of this song just constantly going through my head, I gave it some attention, wondering what message was within. And I didn't know many of the words except a few from the chorus, which was the part that kept playing over my head. And I never knew what the song meant since I had never paid it much attention. But before I get to the song, I want to share, I then had another lower vibration come in again and started feeling sad, like really, really sad. This time it only lasted a couple of days, and as I sat on the edge of my bed the other night, feeling the sadness taking me over, I asked, why am I feeling this way? And so I started talking it through, and the answers came. I went through wounds that I've already experienced healing with on a few occasions. Of course, it makes sense that the really deep stuff would have to go through many cycles before getting worked out. And there will probably always be ongoing healing with certain things, like the really big things. I guess I'm learning to recognize some of this more and more as I take a closer look at things that bother me or especially trigger me. Then, I allow myself to sit in those feelings and just talk about them out loud. And something about doing it out loud really helps me just kind of communicate and listen, I think, better for my higher self to guide me through it. So I think another pattern is emerging through all of this. And I ended up having a huge release the other night. I bawled my eyes out, but then I just apologized to myself. And I've done that before, but it really got into me much deeper than ever before, I feel like. And I didn't do that because, it's something I'd heard that we should do, but because I truly, truly felt apologetic in my heart towards myself. And it was for things that I'd done many years ago, but I felt like that was associated with this sadness I was feeling, which came from loneliness. I just felt it in that moment. I was still sitting there in my bed, and I could hardly breathe through my nose at all. And my face was wet with tears, but it was just suddenly I felt this release. I felt really good. So now, only 2 days later, while the awareness of this pattern of recognizing and healing is fresh in my experience, something else to do with childhood traumas triggered me just yesterday. Now I know what to do with it. I'm going to allow myself to feel it out, talk it out, cry it out. And some people might need to scream it out. Whatever feels like releasing it, I'm going to recognize it, acknowledge it, and make amends if needed. So when my higher self told me we were both in our heart space, I knew intuitively that deeper healing would occur. I didn't know how that might happen, but with all of what's been coming through lately, I have no doubts that this same healing energy is sharing with my twin, and that's really uplifting to me. So the song is Superman, It's Not Easy by Five for Fighting. I'll put the lyrics up here. The video actually shares even more through the imagery of what this song means. So during my journey, I've learned how we're conditioned in many ways through many sources, and men are especially taught to be strong, dependable, to tough it out, to suck it up, and repress their emotions. The truth has been so distorted that toxic and wounded femininity and masculinity became the norm. The words of the song imply that he's aware of his truth. He says, "I'm not that naive." Society and other agents that help shape our ego have built up this ideal of what a man should be. He knows that he's so much more than that, though, what we've been conditioned to believe we are or what we're limited with. He says, "I'm only a man in a silly red sheet." Like he recognizes the absurdity and the deception that he's been molded with. It's not easy to overcome this way of thinking of himself, though, to go against the Matrix agencies as he searches for his better version. He's not buying into the conditioning any longer, but he's also struggling to break free from it, to allow himself to be as he was designed. He says he has the right to bleed, the right to dream. That means to me, to live, to express from his heart. And he says that I wish that I could cry, fall upon my knees. Because men are taught not to cry. And I think that he's talking about trusting in his soul as well when he says, "Lie about a home I'll never see." And you can see in the video that there are people as adults, but then we see them as children as well. And so it's like you're going back to being who you were truly designed, because we're like that when we're children, but we haven't grown into our awareness yet. And also, he's pointing out that he's human. Like, we're meant to have our feelings and recognize those emotions that they come from, to experience that and learn from it and live through it and not shut it out, but grow from it. He also thinks it's easier to just live in ignorance rather than go against the conditioning, because he says he's talking about, "I wish I could find a way to lie." Like in the movie The Matrix, the blue pill keeps them in the illusion while the red pill allows them to know the truth. And then he says, digging for kryptonite on this one-way street. Like kryptonite is that thing that weakens Superman. It's the thing that holds him down, holds him back. So he's still going through the motions because his whole life has been built around believing this is the only way, that one-way street. But he's getting out of that by realizing he's just a man and he's only been pretending to be Superman. So as I've seen through sharing my experience with others, that a lot of our journey is, some of the things are happening simultaneously or about the same time, very similar things at least. It's that same energy. And so I believe that this is probably happening on a collective level, that the physical twin or the grounded twin is coming into that, like they're aware now, and they've been awakened or are awakening, and because that can be quite a process sometimes, but they're growing and healing. And it's felt like this most recent healing has been dealing with the lower three chakras, the more masculine chakras, the more physically linked chakras, the root chakra, the sacral chakra, and the solar plexus chakra. And those are about security, stability, sexual and sensual creativity, and expression. They're all about expression and identity, confidence in your identity. They express more outwardly their giving and are 3D linked. So this is reflecting in both of us. This will help both of us to ground. And to me, I believe that he's going to want to express through his divine masculinity. And I don't know that that means that he would express with me directly, maybe not yet. I don't know what kind of growth is yet to come for me and him through the heart. But I do believe eventually that we would both be magnetized towards each other as we grow. And I especially like the last line and the last verse because it's something that has immensely changed my life, which is looking for special things inside of me. That's the pattern that's been emerging, to look inside, and this reflects in my twin as he too looks inside.